on, Sasha? How you
There you
doing?
go. A nice Wednesday, a little windy here in Texas, but everything is perfect.
Right on.
Thank you so much. How about yourself? How are the things your way?
Oh man, I'm doing amazing. I'm doing great. Doing awesome. It was a great conversation. The last podcast that we had.
Oh, you remember it still?
Yeah, yeah. So I was wondering. I don't know if you had something specific you wanted to talk about. I mean, maybe things you were going through this week, or if you wanted to elaborate more on what we talked about last week, or if you wanted me to elaborate more on kind of what my following steps are whenever I'm working with clients. Um, or whatever.
Go,
Just it's up to you.
go with the flow.
Yeah,
Go with the
yeah.
flow. It's kind of like the best way to go. So, how much we actually what fascinates me is actually that kind of when I listen to you and then later I elaborate my point of view, like the foundation of why we are doing things is the same almost. I wouldn't
Mhm.
say like it's like 99% of the. I wouldn't even see like what perception we have different in a sense that the dog is coming into a new environment and the dog is looking to adapt to a new settings, the new group, the new leader. The dog is looking for a leader, and if there is no leader, the dog will step in that position, and that's what's ours to ensure dog that they are taken care of. Because
Right.
once the dog overtake, because not because the dog wants to lead, it's because the leader's position is felt empty. And it's not empty because we are still taking them to a walk. Actually, what you said, we are taking them to hunt. We are taking them to mark territories, to protect the territory that we call walk. We are interacting with them through the play. We are feeding them, so we are source providers of the food. So we fulfill the roles of the leader, but we
Mhm.
don't behave like one. We don't
Yeah.
behave like a leader. We oftentimes overstep the boundaries of the too much babying, humanizing the dog. How would your wolf dog react if you would baby talk to them, or actually not the baby talk? If you would humanize them to that point in which you are actually making them be your kids,
Yeah.
what would you?
So
What would be the
with
price of
me,
that?
yeah, with me, I think one of the differences, um not just not it's like it's a minute difference just between you and I, but it's also a big difference between me with other trainers as well, is how I choose to use the verbiage, or the choice of words I use whenever I'm working with clients, because I really try very hard to segregate myself from what typical dog trainers do or what dog trainers say. And so I kind of stay away from the words leader or alpha or dominance or control or showing that you're the boss. So a lot of the times what I try to tell clients is that it's not so much that people fail to be the leader. It's just that they're in a state of fear and control. So when they have like, and this was something I learned a lot about myself as when I was, with my children. A lot of how I treated my children seemed very strict and controlling and managing. But once I started learning a lot more about myself and going to self help and going to life coaches and counselors and marriage and family therapists, I started realizing that the source of all of this stuff that I'm doing is really based in fear. So I have fear, so I got to control with a leash, I got to control with obedience, I got to control with commands, and it just kind of bleeds off to the dogs. So a lot of the times, when I'm helping my clients and they're going through my program, a lot of the things that they're doing or the mistakes, the common mistakes they make, come from a place of fear of loss of control of their dog, which then turns into over management or overtraining or micromanagement. And they're too scared to see what the dog's choices are going to be, and they don't know how to respond if it's the wrong choice. Um,
How would you call the owners if you wouldn't use a world leader or alpha or whatever
just
bad
as an
term?
owner, yeah, just an owner. Like, let me give you an example.
But kind of like look at this: when you own something,
Mhm.
then
Or pet
literally
parent.
no, no.
I
But
just
if
try
you
to stay. I just try to stay away from the common dog training verbiage. Um, And I kind of more or less talk to the pet parent, or if they want to call themselves owner, as just somebody that doesn't know anything about dog training, or because a lot of the times, like I remember when I was working with some clients, I noticed if I ever use the word leader or boundaries, they quickly start thinking of Cesar Millan, pack leader, and their mind goes a completely different direction than what I'm talking about as far as being a better parent and having more of an autonomous dog. So, unfortunately, with our industry, anytime somebody hears something that's catchy, that's a catchy phrase, they automatically cling to it, bastardize it, and then it doesn't mean the same thing as it does with everybody, right? I had one person think that when I meant being a leader, it meant that they had to be more dominant and they had to be more machismo. And then I
Yeah,
had to
you can.
explain to them that's not what I mean by leader. You know,
I mean, like you have a leaders in North Korea that are exactly like that, or you have them around the world that are behaving exactly like that. But also on the other side, it's not about the leading with the power; it's leading with the inspiration, with
it's
enforcement.
parental guidance, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever. But like when you're talking about people over babying the dog, I'll give you kind of an example, which kind of goes along to what my next steps are anyway when it comes to the podcast previous, where I started telling you, hey, this is the first week that I usually work with my clients. So in the second week of working with my clients, when I have that crate feeding station, in the second week, I usually tell the client, hey, what we're going to change is going to be very minute, but it's important. And I tell them, you know, first show me videos that the dog's going into their crate clearly to eat without any forethought or reservation at all. And they show me the video that, yeah, they open the crate, they say go back, dog goes right there, starts eating their food. So once I can see that the dog's confidently doing that, and doesn't have any reservations for the crate, then I kind of say, okay, next time when you bring the dog to the crate after a walk, instead of having the food in there already with food, right? Instead of having the bowl already back to the crate with food, just leave the empty bowl on top of the crate. So when you lead the dog, you take off the leash, you point to the crate, you say, get back. The dog goes in automatically because they've been doing that for the past week anyway. The only difference is that the bowl wasn't there waiting for them. So when they go back in, then you close the crate, which is their first experience ever having that crate closed. Then you take the empty bowl, which is now sitting on top of the crate. You take it, go fill it with food, bring it back, open the crate, put it in, close it, let the dog finish their meal. And then afterwards, when we let the dog out, we start working on word associations on teaching the puppy their first boundary. What
And what is
typically happens, though,
what is the
typically
rationale behind?
happens is what typically happens is that the pet parent, they either don't follow the directions or they miss an integral step, which is either they take the leash off too early, the dog rushes to the crate before they can get to the crate and realizes there's no food in there, and then the dog walks straight out and realizes my food's not in there yet. And then the dog won't go into the crate unless they see the owner physically put the food in there. And that's not the proper step. So then they ask me, what should I do? And this is where the pet parent learns their first experience of how to not let the dog's actions dictate your own, not to let the dog suck you into their dramatic situation, but rather continue doing what you've been normally doing, what your intent was to do, and let the dog be the one to change their character or solve that problem on their own, on where their error was that caused the confusion. And not a lot of people like to see their dog in confusion. It causes them stress. So what I tell them is, if your dog won't go into the crate because you didn't close it after they went in, and then they dipped out saying, hey, there's not food in there yet, and they refuse to go to the crate, you act as if they did anyway. So you still close the crate, given that the dog's not in there. You take the empty bowl, you go fill it with the food, you bring it back, you put it in the crate, you close the crate, and you leave without the dog having access because they never went in originally as if they were supposed to. And then you just do it the following meal. That is super hard for clients to comprehend. So what usually happens is they go, oh my gosh, but then he's not eating, or I have to feed him, or he missed a meal. And I have to try to teach them that when you go to a pet store and you buy one of those cognitive food puzzle toys, which I can't stand, it raises the dog's cognitive function to figure out how to get the food in the puzzle toys. And they sell them all over PetSmart and Petco, which I'm not in a big agreement for. And it claims to raise their cognitive function and to have latent learning type effects. And I have to explain to people that it does have
can I ask you a question now here?
Sure.
You have that go in there, like they are telling to the dog to go inside the crate, or no?
Yeah.
They do. And can you just explain me now why I'm doing this? Why because as a pet parent, I would always, in order for me to do, it's not enough for me to you tell me what to do. I need to know the rationale, why I'm doing that. What exactly are we doing that? Because now, as you told me, the food is in there, and because the dog didn't choose to get in the crate.
Okay, so
he doesn't have an access to
the food was in there for a week, the week before.
No, I get that,
it's not in there at this point.
Wait. But now you are telling the crate is open, the dog gets in, goes out because there is no food, and you are putting the food inside the crate. The dog is not inside. You are closing the crate. And then, is it the dog now punished because he didn't stay in a crate?
No,
or he would get the food like a reward. So I would just love to learn what is the rationale of yours by doing this. Why?
The rationale is that the dog has been going in the crate fluidly, right? He knows that the food's going in the crate. He's had a week of understanding that the crate is a feeding station, and he's had a week of the word association of get in or go back for a whole week now. So there's been an association already created. A lot of times clients during that week already tell me, oh, well, the dog just lays in there on his own because he likes the crate so much. So there's that has to happen first, where the dog has an association. What happens though is when they change something, such as the food wasn't there to start, the dog still has that conditioned state that they just walk in because they've been doing that for a week. So normally the dog goes in there and the client just closes it and it goes smoothly and they can go get the food. The dog not going in there unless there's food in there is usually a mistake that the client makes or the owner makes, right?
And you don't consider that conditioning?
No, because the dog already knows how to eat. It's just a routine. The dog has the routine. He knows the routine. It wasn't trained.
But he's conditioned to get into the crate because the food is there.
No, conditioning is teaching a behavior that the dog doesn't already know, and you're conditioning a behavior. The dog already knows how to eat. He didn't need to be taught how to eat. He goes in there. There's a positive association, yes, but you're not conditioning the dog to go eat. He was eating already before.
No, but how this separate? How this? Because we said like in this entire paradigm of making dog have choice on their own, the food has a strategic point, right? And then we would use a food in order, like how that food association with the crate is different than giving
conditioning
the dog
a behavior. It's different than positive reinforcement. Because positive reinforcement in training or conditioning is teaching a behavior that the dog doesn't already know how to do. Right? What we're doing is we're taking an action that the dog already knows how to do, and we're tying a word association to it. The dog didn't have to learn to go in the crate to eat. He would have done that. It's almost like me. It's almost like somebody coming to me and saying, "Hey, Tony, I need to hire you for a really important issue." And I say, "Well, what do you need to hire me for?" "I need to know how to train my dog to eat out of a bowl." The first thing I would say is, you don't have to train your dog to eat out of a bowl. Just put food in there and he'll eat out of the bowl. And that person will overcomplicate it and say, well, don't you have to first get treats and lead it up to the bowl? Then maybe one is in the bowl. And when he eats the one, maybe then they put 3 in the bowl until he learns how to eat out of the bowl. No, you're overcomplicating it. Just put the food in the bowl. He's going to eat. That's just an innate behavior. The bowl is going to become a positive association, but you don't have to train him to use the bowl. It's the same thing with a doghouse. You don't get a doghouse, put it in your backyard, then call a trainer and say, can you help me train my dog to use the doghouse? You don't have to train the dog to use the doghouse. As soon as it rains, as soon as it gets too hot, the dog will find the doghouse is useful on his own. So when you have the food in the crate, the dog's already going in the crate to eat. It's not that you had to teach him how to do that. he was already doing that because it's part of his innate behavior anyway to eat. You're just creating a positive association to it, and you're also tying a word to it to create word associations. So it's the same thing as potty training. So let me give you an example with potty training as well.
Wait.
Wait, let me finish this. Let me finish this one
No, but
thought.
wait, but you're not hearing my question, because I'm keep asking, how is this different than the clicker training? Or because you are doing the word and nice association with the word and the food, and now the dog is know how to eat, but then he know how to take a treat as well. Because if I would, how is, and I just want to understand, like, how is this different than if I'm teaching my dog to go to the crate with giving him a treat as so he know how to eat the treat as well as he know how to eat the food. And what
one
is
is
the
a one
difference?
is a positive association, and the other one is teaching the dog to do something that they don't know how to do. So if you're using the food as a lure to get the dog to do something that they don't otherwise know how to do, and you're reinforcing it, then you're trying to manipulate what they're trying to do and reinforcing with the food.
Like
You're not actually manipulating the dog to do anything they wouldn't already do. You're just taking advantage of what the dog's already doing on their own, and you're just creating a positive association to it. But it's not necessarily becoming a conditioned behavior.
with the crate.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
Would this
positive association to the crate, but you didn't teach him how to go into the crate. You didn't teach him how to eat out of the crate. The crate just became a positive association to his ritual.
And we need the crate because
the second week, which is what I was getting into, is when we start to continue to nurture the dog's innate understanding of what a natural boundary is. A natural boundary is a threshold that can't be crossed, but there isn't any physical barrier creating this threshold. It's an invisible barrier. It's basically the mom, when she has the puppies at their den, that den doesn't have a door on it because it's a den. It's not a crate. There's no gate on it. And so one of the first things that she teaches her puppies, especially sometimes as well in a whelping box, is that they can't leave the den. The mother can go for an hour to 2 hours migrating for food and resources and come back and regurgitate it. And when she comes back, those puppies are still in the den. They never left that natural boundary, despite that they could have left if they wanted to because there's no gate on it. So they learn their natural boundary that way. So a lot of the times when the clients get their puppy, they need to continue nurturing what a natural boundary is in relation to them. And a lot of times people mess that up. So and also too, when people get a puppy, they naturally want to learn how to crate train their puppy, which I don't believe in necessarily crate training, but I do believe that it will happen if you let the dog go through its natural understanding of what the crate is for. So what I usually do, as I was mentioning before, is when the dog goes into the crate, because they already have that positive association, and you close the crate, that is the first time they've ever experienced that the crate is now closed. But generally, they don't pay much attention to the crate being closed because you're grabbing the bowl and they realize, okay, food's coming. And they already have a positive association to the crate that's been their feeding station for the past week. So there isn't any panic or frustration with their first physical boundary experience. They're just waiting for the owner to come back with the food. When the owner comes back with the food, they put it in and the dog eats. And then they let the dog out. And when they let the dog out, they do their first, what I call a crate boundary, which is they basically teach the dog, hey, don't come out of the crate until I say come out of the crate. And usually the puppy starts to understand that natural boundary. And then it goes into more word associations like come over here. So they start to have an association that when I come out of the crate to you, I understand come over here is that word to come out to you. And since the crate's already a funnel to you, it's already they're already coming to you naturally because they're happy to see you. So you're just tying another word association. You add a word association to it. But
is the crate closed while they're eating in that second?
Yes. Yeah. But the thing is when they're done eating, the pet parent, they cannot leave their puppy in there for any duration of time. The puppy shouldn't be panicking and the puppy shouldn't have to ask to be let out. So so they have to pay attention. If they're just off washing dishes and the puppy's been done eating for the past 10 minutes and still in the crate, and the puppy tends to experience stress from that, that's not a very good thing. So I always tell clients, you need to pay attention when your puppy's done eating. Before they even ask to be let out, you should already be there opening that crate, right? But when they decide to step out, then you use your association word, get back, and you calmly close it. They step away, you open it, wait, see if they break the threshold. If they do, calmly close it, say get back, open it, wait, see if they maintain the threshold. And if they maintain that threshold with get back, then you start to use your word association for come over here. And then they rush over to you, and they rush over to you very happily because they've been dying to come over and lick your face. But what I was using that example because in the original question about how owners tend to baby their dogs, or they let the dog, or they cater to their dogs or over cater, and creates issues. So what I was mentioning is that really simple exercise that I have clients do, I often have them mess it up. And when they mess it up because of their own error, then it's their first experience of, okay, you messed this up. You created a situation. So rather than going to panic, what do I do? What do I do? It's my first experience to teach them that you don't do anything about it. You continue going about what you were planning on doing anyway. You don't over cater to the dog. You don't try to resolve the issue. It's their responsibility to figure out where their error was, and they need the time to figure out where their error was and change their decision in order to make sure they don't make the same error next time. So what I generally tell the client is, close the crate as if he did go in there. Grab the empty bowl, get your food, put it in there, close the crate, and leave it there. He's going to realize his error, and he's going to realize, I want to get into the crate, but I can't get into the crate. I don't have thumbs. I don't know how to open it. I need the human to do that. I missed my opportunity. Where did I mess up? So the crate experience becomes a puzzle for them to want to get in their crate, not want to break out of their crate. So now they're just, wow, I need to get in here. I need to get in here. So again, there's still a positive association with the crate. They just can't get at the food. The next time.
And what would you do if they want to get into the crate, like grabbing the because
Nothing.
they are hungry and they want to go in and they are just kind of like
Nothing.
trying to do?
Nothing. Yeah, I don't do anything. Eventually what they do is they give up. So they give up, then the client
and again, like there was so many interesting points, and you just rush so fast on one topic to the other.
Yeah. So let me do this. Let me get through the exercise. Let me get through the exercise and explanation.
Then I need to,
let's go back to the questions.
Tell me like that, so I need to take a note.
Okay, yeah. So what happens is the dog wants to get in the crate. So now you're dealing with a situation where the dog wants to get in the crate, and that is a good situation to have. The dog is just a little frustrated because he didn't realize where his error was. Basically, when he probably first went in, he thought he was getting food. He was in a little bit of a reactive state. He was getting food, but he realized there wasn't food, and then he made the decision to get out of the crate rather than wait for the food to come. So there was his error. He just doesn't know what that error is yet. So I usually have the client then on the next time just follow the same pattern, and what you'll realize is that when you open the crate and you say get back, whether there's food in there or not, he will definitely go back in. Sometimes it takes several repetitions, but he will eventually make the decision to go back in. And then you close it, and then he gets that aha moment. There was my error, was I didn't go in the last time. So the dog now starts to raise their cognitive function, and they start getting their first experience with problem solving something on their own. That is a very important cognitive function that puppies need to learn at some point, and you just take advantage of that situation to let them figure it out on their own. But what I was mentioning was when they do that, or when they go through that experience, I have a harder time with the pet parent because of their over need of wanting to help the dog, or not letting the dog figure things out on their own, or trying to make the exercises easier for the dog to understand, or taking a little piece of kibble and throwing it in the crate so they can chase it to try to help the dog through the problem. And when you start to over micromanage or start to do this form of control or overtraining because the dog's not being cooperative, rather than let the dog figure it out on their own, then you start getting into control and management, and that becomes the way of thinking throughout the whole dog's life. Every time the dog doesn't do something you want, you have to find a way to counter it by having a shaky treat, having a tool, or having a leash. So that basic problem happens sometimes, and it's a wonderful opportunity, although it's super hard for the pet parent to work on their own internal conflicts of, don't help the dog. Tony says the dog will figure it out. And that's the hard part, is a lot of people just don't know how to stop helping the dog and let the dog figure it out. So that's kind of what I was saying, was I have similar issues with what you're mentioning about people over babying the dog or wanting to cater to the dog so much that it ends up being a behavioral issue, because you have to manage it like that for the rest of your life if that's how you're going to treat the dog. The dog needs to elevate himself cognitively to know how to function in your environment, not you change the environment and change yourself and your lifestyle to adapt to the dog. And then that's where we start to get behavioral issues, when clients start responding that way. So what were some of the questions that you had?
So it was like, so the dog need to make a decision so what is the difference in between, like in between the dog making decision to go into the crate to eat, or withholding the food, or not giving an access to the food to the dog if he doesn't go in a crate when I want? Like,
so there's the misconception of that, and that's where people have the problem understanding the concept, is they think that they're punishing the dog, they think they're withholding food from their dog, and they think they're not giving access to food to the dog. You didn't do any of that. The dog did that. They made an error in what they thought you were going to do, and they chose to not go into the crate at the moment that they know they're going to eat, which they've been doing for the past week every day. So they made that one choice of, I'm not going to stay in the crate and wait for my food. I'm going to step out until I see you put the food in. That was their choice. So rather than work on it directly, you don't change anything you do. You leave the dog sitting in his choice until he realizes the error that happened, and then you let him resolve the error. You're not feeding your dog. You're feeding your dog every day as you're supposed to, but it's up to them to figure out what they did that made it so they weren't able to enter the crate beforehand. Once they understand, oh, I need to stay in the crate, you're bringing the food, then it starts to click for them. They get their first life puzzle to solve, and they understand that. But you're not withholding food. You're still feeding them every day. They're making the wrong decision that's making the error and the reason why they're not able to get their food.
No, I get it, but error is made if the dog doesn't go by if I'm taking a dog on a leash, for example, and I would have a treat, and I'm telling to my dog, because that's something that, you have these people like, don't feed your dog at home, take your food with yourself and just feed the dog while he's going next to your leg. And we can interpret that if the dog makes right decision and he's going next to my leg, I'm gonna release the food. If the dog is making a wrong decision,
that's shaping a behavior that you're trying to manage. This dog is making, and this is also, you're also using repetitiveness. You're doing this repetitively to try to get the dog to do an action for you, and then you're withholding reward if he won't do it for you. That's not what we're doing. We
have a crate, and then I said like.
Let me give you another example. Let me give you another example. I've used this example before. When you have a dog outside and you call them in for dinner, right? And he comes in every day at 6 p.m. for dinner. You always say, Fido, and every day at 6 p.m. he runs in because he knows dinner's going to happen. And one day Fido's outside and you say, Fido, come on in for dinner. And he literally looks up at you and he goes, yeah, I'm not coming in. And you think to yourself, oh my gosh, he's not coming in. So maybe you say it one more time, Fido, dinner. And once again, he looks at you, doesn't come in from the backyard. The most common mistake people make is, I need to get the food bowl and shake it so he knows it's feeding time. Or I need to show him that I have a really good bag of treats to get him. Or I need to put a pinch collar on him next time in a long line, so if he does that, I can reel him in. The answer is no. He didn't come in. He made a decision. You just close the door and he just misses his meal. That's not you withholding reward. That's not you saying, You didn't do what I asked, so I'm punishing you. You're not doing anything differently than you normally do in your routine. He just made an error, which he didn't want to eat. It may not even be an error. It may be that he's just doesn't want to eat. He's not hungry. So you have to be okay. We don't know what the dog's mind is thinking. We just know he made that decision. So that's his decision. Later on, the dog will realize their error when they realize, whoa, I was really hungry. I should have came in. And maybe he'll do that tomorrow next time, right? It's not something you're going to try over and over again. So for example, you're not going to say, oh, 10 minutes later, are you sure you don't want to come in? Nope, still doesn't want to come in. And then 10 minutes later, are you sure? Because the food's going to be, if you do that, that becomes repetitive training like you're talking about with the treat, with holding a retreat, giving the opportunity with holding a retreat. That's a drill. You don't ever want to do a drill. You want to keep your life in conjunction to what you're normally doing. So you don't practice things repetitively. He made a decision. He missed his opportunity. You go through your routine just like you have been for the past week. You don't drill it over and over again. He needs to figure out on his own when the next opportunity arises. And that's what raises cognitive function. If you do things repetitively in close succession, that becomes conditioned behavior, and it doesn't latently carry over to real life situations of how to solve issues, because it's only in context of that specific moment. That's the reason why a lot of people, when they say, I teach my dog how to sit and stay in the house. Perfect. Only problem is, if you're training your dog to stay in the house, that won't latently carry over to the shopping mall. That won't latently carry over when they see a cat or another dog. So then the trainer says, oh, we have to proof it now, meaning that we teach sit, stay in the house, but we also have to practice it at the mall. We also have to practice it at the dog park. We also have to practice it at a relative's house. That's latent learning doesn't work that way. Latent learning, when you teach them how to resolve a situation, a puzzle on their own, you don't have to try it again at the mall, try it again at the dog park. It latently carries over because it's an experience. It's a life experience that they solved, not through repetitiveness, but just through going through life experience. And those lessons will latently carry over to other situations that you never even had to work on.
Mm. And then we had another thing is, the only problem, I completely agree with this, when dog is out and you're calling him in for the dinner and they don't come, and you close the door, you had your opportunity, you didn't came, and that's it. You're going to eat next time. What bothers me is a crate itself, because the crate is something that the dog need to get in, or if he doesn't get in, you will put the dog inside, and then you're gonna, again, you said like
no, hold on. If the dog doesn't want to go in the crate,
I can never happen to ask my question completely. You're always jumping in.
Because you're repeating my words incorrectly, so I don't want you to misunderstand.
No, but let me phrase it out and then tell me you are not right. Wait, please.
Okay.
So what I want to understand, because really I'm not asking you to kind of confront you. I'm asking you because I want to understand, and I just don't see the picture how if the dog is getting the food inside the den, let's say this little crate is now the den, and now the den need to be closed so the dog eats inside the den, which is a free place that he can choose to go in and out. But the food relationship between dog outside the home and you are calling him to eat doesn't bother me if you close the door, because the dog had a choice. Here we had like week of training the dog or whatever.
No, we weren't training the dog.
Giving the dog the food inside the crate in a certain way.
So the crate now has an association of what it's for.
Okay, and then we had the next thing is when we want to let the dog be inside the crate after he ate the food. We don't want them to come out immediately. You want to invite them to get outside, to step out from the crate. But in order to do that, if the dog comes out from the crate uninvited or without a calling, you're going to close the door. So you're going to tell him, not yet, because I didn't call you. How is that not conditioning? That's what I want that not to be conditioning, but I want that to understand. I want to understand how, by closing the door every single time that the dog is doing something you are not want to do, because you want to call the dog to come out. And if he comes out without you calling him, you're going to close the door, wait him to step back, open the door again, and wait for him to make a good decision without coming out, not being cold. And of course, if you're gonna present him with this situation that every single time when he wants to come out, he's gonna be close the door in front of the nose until he do not connect 2 and 2. But again, I'm asking, just explain me. It's not a challenge. It's challenge on me. I wanna like I'm dummiest as possible I can be. And please explain me how that is not conditioning.
Because the dog already knows what a boundary is. You're not training him not to, you're not training him. You're for example, the mother, whenever she doesn't want the puppies near her, she'll growl. Okay. She's not training them or conditioning them. She's just asking for space. If another dog blocks another dog, he's not training him, don't enter my space. He's just demanding space, and that dog already has an innate understanding of what personal space is supposed to be. Okay. So when the puppy is trying to step out, you're not blocking with your body, you're just closing the door. And then he realizes, oh, I can't step out yet. So then the dog steps back and starts to understand, okay, the door's open. And then when he tries to step out, you close it. And then he goes, oh, don't step out yet. Then he steps back, then you open it. And then from there, you'll start to realize that the puppy just won't come out because he understands you must not want me out yet. And so then you communicate, all right, come over here, come to me. Which you didn't teach him to come to you, he's already going to do it anyway. So what you're doing is you're nurturing behavior that's already there. You're not conditioning a behavior that doesn't exist yet.
With repetitive closing the door, if the dog misunderstand the understanding to go through the door without being invited, every single time he need to come up. I do understand the concept that the dog is not told what to do. He had a choice either to understand to go out with try to go out without being called, or wait for the signal so he can come out. I just do understand. I just try to understand is that's also repetitive motion. Every single time when the dog tries to come out, you are closing the door, sending repetitively kind of like, this is not what you should do, this is not what you should do, this is not what you should do. Okay, and then he stands there and say, okay, tell me what you do. Okay, come. I should come. But isn't that the same conditioning? That's what I don't get. How this is not conditioning, and the giving a food is giving a treat is conditioning. Because here I have a physical boundary putting in front of the dog's nose every single time when they try to.
Actually, it might be considered. It might be considered some form of negative reinforcement, but it's not. It's not done with food or treats. It's not going to be blindly conditioned. So you know how you said. You know how you say that. Okay, you don't believe in conditioning and you don't believe in operant conditioning. Right? It's bad. It raises cortisol levels.
We kind of we made that conclusion when we were talking about it.
Okay. But you also and maybe I might be misspeaking, so maybe this is an assumption that I shouldn't assume, but you also don't seem to understand operant conditioning very well because you are doing operant conditioning in some of the stuff that you do. So when you say, hey, if the dog does something that they're not supposed to do and it's offensive, you can put them in a 30-second timeout, right? And then let them out. And if they continue, 30-second timeout until they make a different decision. That's negative reinforcement. So that's conditioning.
Yeah, of course. But you give them 3 choices before you did that. There is thank you. There is I go and see what's going on. And then I released you from it's okay, you didn't need to worry about. And then just if they go beyond that, I'm just tell you, I can. And the great thing would be, I was talking about the environment of the setting of the apartment, yes. But if I would have a house, the outside would be okay. If you keep doing this, like take away out, like out from
the giving them 3 choices before you do that action doesn't change what that's called. It's still operant conditioning. You may have given them 3 opportunities to avoid it, but when they didn't, you used operant conditioning to teach them a repetitive pattern, a pattern to recognize.
Yeah, but
So you are still using operant conditioning, even though you gave him 3 opportunities to make a different decision. It's still operant conditioning.
yeah, because
But the difference
no,
is,
no.
um, we don't want we don't want to drill, right? So we're not drilling. There's a very fine line between just doing things in order of how you do them and repetitively drilling. So I'm not just sitting there opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, closing, opening, closing. Oh, he's doing good now. Come out. I'm looking for a pause and thought. So he tried to step out, closed it, said, get back. I opened it. And maybe he's trying to step out again. Okay, I'll close it. I'll step back. I open it. Right, come on out. I don't make it a long session. It's just hey, just a second. Okay, come on out. It's just a little blip. It's an experience. It's not a drill. So I think that's where the misunderstanding is.
Okay, but yeah, because the whole crate thing is kind of bothering me. I would love everything of that you talked about to happen without a crate, because then I would understand really that you don't have something that's going to be a physical boundary that's put on top of the dog so he do understand his place within the house. When I'm telling him I'm putting my dog outside the home if he doesn't behave the way I want, but at that point I'm really kind of like I kind of like the energy that flows, that it's kind of like you said, like a dad telling to the child, these are rules under my roof. And there is a chance that you follow what I told you to, and I ask you again, can you just make up your room? Or can you just make up your room? And third time, are you making your room? I'm not making. Okay, now I'm going to have mom pack everything in your room and you're going to find yourself in a hotel room if you can afford it. And that's the idea in which punishment or this conditioning, what you said, like offering conditioning would be in association with this barking thing, is that I did that to Henny once. Only in kind of like he was barking on the neighbor. I heard he was barking when we took him we took a trip to Florida. He was a puppy, like maybe 3-4 months, right? We just got him, and we were in hotel, and they were like ladies, I don't know, moving around something in front of and I heard him first time barking. It was like 3 a.m. in the morning. He barked. I said, thank you. He continued barking. In 3 in the morning, I woke up. I went in front of him. I stepped in. I didn't open the door, but I looked at the door and I told him, it's okay. And I get back to sleep. Next time he barked, I stand up. I put him in bathroom. That was the last time I heard him bark.
Yeah. So I think you're mistaking the exercise as a form of punishment. So where is the punishment happening, or do you think the crate is being used for punishment?
No, I'm just having this. The crate is a big physical boundary, right? Physical boundary that is now associated with food, and the associate. You use term association. The dog associate his safe place, or
it's this feeding station. Yeah.
The dog, the crate can be of good use, and I'm really up because you cannot travel with if the dog is not trained crate, things like that. But I never had a problem with the dog that trusts their parents enough that they're going to put him in a crate and he's going to just be okay in a crate because he don't care. He's not in a position. He understands that he's taken care of. And if mom says that we are going here tomorrow and then we are going there tomorrow and now we are in a car and now we are in a crate and tomorrow we are in a plane, the dog doesn't care because that in that environment, the dog feel completely taken care of. And that's what the dogs in real life were to the people. They were followers. They were going after the humans into hunt, into protection, into everything, but they didn't do nothing uninvited. So the dog actually, and that's when you put yourself to the highest point of trust of your dog and understand the dog look at you like a little god, then you don't have any problem walking your dog because he won't go away from you if the dog is on a leash or if they are not on a leash. Not because they don't want to go away from you, but because they're looking at what's your next step. And by doing constantly looking at you or feeling you later on as you go through the relationship with your dog, the dog kind of have you as a highest value target in their life. And if
Yeah.
that happens, then they don't go anywhere from you. And there is nothing to other
So,
than
so
really,
just so you know, I'm lost in the conversation. I don't. Are we just talking about something completely different now? Do you understand what I meant by the crate, and we're moving on to something else? Or are we going? Are we still talking about the crate? I'm misunderstanding, or I'm not.
yeah, because
I'm being lost.
that's what I'm yeah, okay. Thank you for letting me know. Don't let me go around like so much until you tell me I'm because
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, to get me
yeah.
back on
So
track
I don't use the crate for
faster.
pun. I don't use the crate for punishment.
No, that was
I
not
don't
a
even actually
question.
contain my dogs in the crate.
That was not a question. The question is, why do we need a crate at all? That's a question.
Because the crate is a simple boundary. There's a when you leave that crate open and you can just step out of it, that threshold is really small. It's easy for them to understand, like the den. So when you ask them to take a brief moment just to reflect that there's a boundary here, it's something really easily that they understand, rather than teach a more complicated boundary later. So later on, I teach a more complicated boundary. I'm not going to say this is what I do, but just as an example, stay out of the kitchen, right? That can be a complicated boundary.
But
And a
I
lot
was
of the times, the dog, sometimes that's a stronger lesson for the dog to understand. It's more confusing. It takes a while for them to get it. And during that moment, there may be too much management or too much pressure coming from the human. So it really can ruin the bond between them. But just a brief moment of thought of, oh, wait, don't step out of the crate yet. Okay, come on out, right? Which is equivalent to if I was inviting you at my house and we're walking through a door and I said, oh, Sasha, watch out for your step there. That step's a tricky one. Oh, okay, you recognize it.
but
Once
you
they have
wouldn't.
the experience, hold on, once they have that experience, then the next step that I usually do with my clients is I start having them learn how to do more complicated boundaries around the house without using baby gates. But I start off with something really simple, as of just to take a pause and thought before you leave the crate. So it starts off as a simple thought, and then I expand on that. So that's the point of why I'm doing it, because I'm preparing for what I have in the future that I'm going to be working on.
Okay, because I loved when you open this class or whatever, we had this conversation with that, like a mom wolf wouldn't teach puppies to go out from the den, and the puppies are not coming out from the den because there is no door in front of the den, and she's the puppies are not coming out from the den. And then all this because when if we put back to that, you're gonna tell me, hey Sasha, watch here, you're gonna crash when I come into your door, when I'm coming into your home, but you wouldn't shut the door in front of my mouth just for me not to fall off. It's kind of like that the crate has a door, and now you're using door to tell to the dog, no, you are not coming out uninvited.
Whether you're blocking with your body or blocking with the door, it's still a very brief physical boundary as opposed to a natural boundary. So I find that if the door is an inanimate object, it doesn't have an emotional connotation to it. It's just a brief closing and then opening. Oh, I guess I can't step out yet. And it's not taken over personally or anything like that. I find that humans don't do a very good job mimicking dogs. So if they use their body, either the puppy gets an advantage and speaks by them because they let the puppy do that, or they're being overly strict about it, like they're staring their dog at the eyes, or they think that they're Caesar Milan and I find that I try to leave room for human error. I try to foresee human error, and I don't want people body blocking. So I just have them just close the door briefly, just to crack, just to let the dog know, hey, don't come out yet. Okay, you can come out now, rather
So,
than do this body block.
and all of this is like entry and taking a dog into a kind of like a way of understanding the boundary. That's the point of doing all of this, right?
Just to observe there's a boundary there. Yeah, just to observe, hey, there's a boundary there. And then you'll find that when you're doing that for a week, you'll see that the puppy, like, you don't even have to close the door. You'll see that as soon as you open it after the puppy's eating, they just look up at you. And then you're just like, yeah, come on out. They learn to have to enter the space correctly. They learn to recognize it before leaving, and then that's when you know, okay, we're ready to move on to the next step. it's very clear that the puppy took a pause and looked up at me saying, is it cool if I cross through this? Oh yeah, absolutely. And once you see that, then you can start making a more complicated boundary in the house. And what I do is I do cognitive puzzles that are in your lifestyle that the dog has to figure out. And as they figure out these cognitive puzzles of little things that you do, then by the time you're done with the program, they're pretty much speaking English. They understand how things work. You don't have to control them. They figure things out on their own. But it just starts off with that one little thought as, hey, wait, don't step out yet. Okay, come on out. And then I start building off of that, which I'll be going into later in the future whenever we talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in contrary to my way of putting boundaries in front of the dogs, is actually doesn't engage in interaction with them on their watch when they want. For example, I would not put, there is no place where you can feed your dog wherever the feeding station is. You put the food down, you eat a couple of bites maybe before that if dog has any problems, and there is kind of like a nice rationale behind that. But the whole point of me setting boundaries with my dog is ignoring. That's the old thing that I kind of like that I do. It's I ignore behavior that I don't want, I find unacceptable and undesirable. The only one, the behavior that they engage in is that, like, let's say over barking, is just to tell them, okay, guy, like, if you can, I don't have a problem with you barking. You're just not going to bark in this house.
Yeah.
And that's
so let me ask for some clarification so I have a better understanding. So if you don't want your dog to go into the kitchen, how do you go about showing them that?
I'll create a physical boundary.
Okay. So yeah, I don't do physical boundaries.
But you said you're going to use baby gates, no?
No, I never use baby gates.
Oh, you said you don't want to use baby gates.
Yeah, I don't use baby gates because baby gates prevent them from using their brain. They need to understand there's a natural boundary, and they need to understand when you say, hey, get back. They need to understand, oh, he doesn't want me in this area. They need to just understand that through experience of just how they've been living their life with you, not trained. So if you try to train it with treats or cookies or anything like that, then you're going the wrong. You won't get latent benefits, meaning that it won't carry over to the real world. It'll just carry over. It'll just stay out of the kitchen in the house. So when I'm working with my dogs and clients' dogs, they're learning natural boundaries through life experience in the house. So we don't use baby gates. The end result is a dog that understands how natural boundaries work in the real world on their own without having to be told. They just see it and they understand it. And so some of the things that I've been able to do with my dogs, for example, because of that, is I've had this is going to just freak people out, but I have wolf dogs. I have a female that's intact, right? Now, I don't leave them unsupervised around that female, but I actually can have my male with my female with me hanging out, and I can just put a boundary around her, and my male, while she's in heat, he won't touch her or go near her.
And he's
because I put a natural boundary around her.
Is he intact as well?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, which is the same thing that happens, also too in the real wolf. Wolves have designated breeding male and breeding female. The other males, they're not neutered. They don't jump on the breeding female and because the male can't do anything about it, right? They understand that she belongs to the breeding male and there's a boundary, right? We can't be sniffing her cooch. That's not good, right? So that's because dogs have this understanding of what a boundary is, a natural boundary. Humans don't. So they don't know what to nurture through the experience that they're having with their dogs. I do. So when I do that, by the time that you're done with the program, my dogs literally understand natural boundaries. So here's an example. I can come to your house with my wolf dog, Hatoto, right? And he'll see that you have chickens loose, right? He's never seen a chicken before. It's probably going to be very exciting for a wolf dog. While other people will freak out and say, maybe you should put him on a leash until you see how he behaves. I don't ever have to do that. As soon as I see Hototo curious about the chickens, I just say, get back away from the chickens in a full sentence. And then I can hang out with you, and he won't ever go to the chickens the whole time we're visiting. I don't ever have to repeat myself. He just knows Dad said get back away from those things. Those are chickens. I guess I just can't go over there. And then he'll do everything else on your property. He'll go look at your horses. He'll go play with your kids. He'll go in your kitchen, but he won't go near the chickens just because I said that one time. So he understands boundaries really well. He understands what's off limits really well. So, and the way go ahead.
Sorry, no, because when I said like I use if there is any kind of like restriction areas in the homes, I don't have people usually asking me that. But if there is any restricted area, what I would use actually are the physical boundaries, so that you are not teaching dog not to do it. You're just preventing them from experiencing it. And usually in 2 weeks, you just can take them off and they won't go in the kitchen without anything telling them. It's kind of like,
so I would be curious to know. I mean, I'd be curious to have to learn other people's experiences if they put up baby gates for 2 weeks and then take them away and the dogs don't go in there anyway. The clients that I talk to don't have that experience. As soon as they take away the baby gate, it becomes an issue. One of the reasons why, though,
because it's not only baby gate, you need to practice the program over 2 weeks, and then actually the dog really understands the physical boundaries. That, for example, if there is a rule, do you want to have a dog on a bed or you don't have a? Some people said I don't want the dog on a bed, and I said, okay, do just physically put something on a bed, like pick up the chairs, put something on the bed, and prevent dog from thinking of jumping on a bed.
So the reason why I don't use physical boundaries is because physical boundaries change the perception of the dog. So instead of the dog having, like, here's an example. I want to use a human example. If you're walking down the sidewalk, it has to do more with self-awareness, right? And physical boundaries do something different other than self-awareness. So when you're walking down a sidewalk, if you trip into the street, you're going to get hit by a car. Okay. There's no physical thing holding you from going onto that sidewalk. There's no signs reminding you, don't forget there's traffic going by. Being able to stay on that sidewalk requires a lot of cognitive maturity from you, which takes time to develop, as well as being self-aware of what's around you, for sure. Okay. Which is what we need for latency for a dog, especially like a hobo dog or a homeless dog. They need that latency. Now, if you're behind a traffic light and it's red, right? A lot of the times, you're not going to have somebody come in front of the light and go, hey, it's red, you can't go. No, Sasha, wait. Okay, it's green, you can go. No, it's impulse control, self-restraint, cognitive maturity. There's nothing blocking you. You can run that red light. You might get a ticket, you might not, you might cause an accident. But it's that cognitive maturity, that self-awareness and impulse control that's really important to raise cognitive function. Okay. Now, I once was talking to a client because she didn't understand the difference between a conditioned state and a self-aware state. And one of the things I said to her is, when you're teaching your children to cross the street, what's the first thing you tell your children to do? And she goes, look both ways. Perfect. Because what are you teaching them? To be self-aware. And I said, now let me ask you this question. I said, if you are at a red light in a car, what do you do? She goes, I stop. Okay, and then what do you do when it turns green? She goes, I go. And I said, you just got T-boned by a car because you weren't self-aware. You were teaching your children to be self-aware, but you got conditioned through the Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV, or your training in driving a car. You got conditioned with the lights because even though the light turns green, you're still supposed to look both ways. You don't just go. Okay, so there's cognitive maturity that takes place there. When you go to a railroad track, ding, 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 the arms drop, the lights blink, and then you see the longest train in the freaking world that you have no idea when it's going to be over. That is a good temporary experience because you need to understand how to handle that form of a little bit of frustration or stress, right? But most people spin around and they get out of there. They're like, I'm not waiting for this stupid ass train, right? So oftentimes, whenever people have some form of interactive containment, and again, this is a human error. So in your program, you may prevent this somehow. And I haven't found a way to prevent it, which is the reason why I do it the way I do it. But when there's a physical boundary, there's a thing called interactive containment, meaning that there's something on the other side of that boundary that the dog wants to see, go to, or be with. And then they experience this frustration behind this physical boundary. And that's where a lot of separation anxiety comes from, frustration, those kind of things. So what I do is I teach my clients not to use the barrier to begin with, but to teach the dog that there's a natural boundary here, you can't cross it. That's all that there is to it. Then they learn how to be self-aware, watch what they're doing. Sometimes they'll self-correct themselves. If they did it by mistake, they'll go back to the correct side. And that's where we see cognitive function developing, which I can measure. And then that also works for the latency for outside.
Okay.
So that's ultimately what I'm working on.
It's kind of very interesting to see how you approach all of this freedom and cognitive kind of like, and that's what I was trying to find a connection with. But maybe in a way we both approach is from the achieving same outcome, because on down the road you still have that physical boundary that start the program and call crate.
Close, so here's the thing. Here's the thing.
This,
right, really,
that, the dog
really quickly. Learn. So really quickly. So you know how you were saying something that, you know, if you don't do something, the dog's going to walk with you anyway, right? Because you already kind of worked on something. And I can't remember exactly what that context was. So let me just get to what I was going to say. By the time you're done with the program, you could put a dog in the crate and close it for his very first experience, and it won't bother him. That's what you were saying before. You were saying, hey, if you do the right thing, you could put them and close the crate, and they should know it's a place of safety. It shouldn't concern them to begin with. Yeah. Why are you doing the baby steps? I don't ever really teach my dogs to be in a crate to begin with, but eventually it's not a big deal. I can put them in a crate and close it. They don't care, even if they experience something for their first time. Or I can put them in another situation and they don't care either. That's what I meant about how things latently carry over. So as far as the physical boundaries, they don't have a problem with physical boundaries. But one of the reasons why they don't have a problem with physical boundaries is because they're already restrained from it. They already understand impulse control, self-restraint, and cognitive maturity and self-awareness, that they've already boundaried themselves, and that them seeing a gate in front of them doesn't change how they feel about it, because they are already aware they're not supposed to leave to begin with.
Through the crate experience.
Through natural boundary experiences. So for example, not being allowed in the kitchen without a gate.
Okay. Wait, we need to.
But it starts off with a brief, just recognize there's a threshold here. That's all that you're doing, is just teaching them, hey, recognize there's a threshold here. Okay, come on out. Once they have that recognition of a threshold, they can start recognizing other boundaries that you set and where those thresholds are.
Okay, I need to tell you something, because my husband bought me 2 cards so far, and on both of them said, please try to close nicely. CVS closes at 8 p.m. So whatever thoughts we have from now, we need to kind of like get it close this conversation. I'm gonna go home with a lot of thoughts to this. I want to put all of this in a constellation to see where the crate comes, where the food comes, how would I observe that, and how would I pursue it? How would I pursue it? Perceive it if I would be a dog. Putting myself.
Well, the thing is I think we can find commonality too. If you tell me, hey, when I put a physical boundary, 2 weeks we can remove it and the dog won't cross it. There's other steps, I'm sure, that you can explain to me as to why that's possible.
It cannot be passive. You are very active during those 2 weeks, and the dog needs to understand that the boundaries that are in place are for the reason, and it's not theirs to question. That's all. And the dogs are looking at us and understand every single boundary. That is how they are learning not to go through the wall. Once the wall is removed, the dog wouldn't go through the wall, because they understand in the environment they are allowed to walk around. That's all. But hold all the thoughts, all the questions, all the remarks you have on this until next Wednesday. So okay. I don't actually slap with the 4th card about this. So thank you, Tony Emery, very much, and I'm kind of like sorry that I need to rush from this episode.
No, and also too, I don't mean this to sound crunchy, because the people that are watching it may think, oh my gosh, they're debating. it's not a debate. It's just that we're so
Oh,
passionate about what it is that we want to share
I really
that we
want to
don't want it
go
to be misinterpreted.
I want to really go into deep cognitive understanding of your rationale, why you are doing things, so I can, put it through my web of how I'm doing things. And on down the road, like maybe we're gonna approach it, and it's, for the dogs to experience the two different things gonna mean the same. But
Yeah.
let's keep all of
So
that for the
really quickly
next.
before we sign off, just really quickly, one more thing I want to say that's really important, because when my whole program is about recognizing natural boundaries. So one of the things is when my clients' dogs get out of their yard or their fenced area, for one, they never leave the neighborhood because of how they walk the dogs. So the dogs even understand how to get back home, and they understand where not to go from the neighborhood. It's a lot of it. It's like a homeless dog. They know their understanding of their territory, and so some of that is done through the natural boundaries.
I love you, Jess. I cannot. I, I'm not allowed to carry this episode longer
All
because
right.
I need to be like, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but it's really kind of like, I can't wait for the next week because this is going to unfold in much better way and directions, because we both going to have a time to comprehend on what we learned today about each other. And I really love the idea of exploring this further. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, and thank you, everyone. I see you next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tony, I love you, my brother, and can't wait to
All right,
continue
brother. Chat with
wonderful
you guys later.
conversation. Bye-bye.
Yeah.